written out. We had a board of directors and executive board all picked. And we just ran that through right quick. You know, let's get that over with, get it organized, get going. It took about 30 minutes and we were organized. We had a board of directors, we had an objective to give plays. And so we chose the first play, later on, the group did, which was biography. And the only reason that was chosen was because the only person willing to direct wanted to do it. That was Harold Bone. But still, we had to get started. But then we needed a place. We needed a place to have a play. Now, our mentors at the Country Playhouse have told us, don't fall into the trap of putting on plays, rehearsing in churches and halls and things, and doing it at a high school or doing it at a junior college. That doesn't give you the continuity. You need your own theater. You need to raise funds to get your own building, your own facilities. It's the nucleus, the concentrating point of the group, and where they right. So we decided, well, we have to work towards that, and we needed a place to do the first play. Well, we looked around. The Rock Reel and Gun Club was offered to us. We looked at that. It was fine. But it was too big. Too big for the intimate theater style we needed. That was another thing that the Country Playhouse told us. Do arena theater. Do theater in the round with the audience on all sides. Small groups. It's easier to act, it's easier to direct. You don't need such elaborate sets. It works better. They were right. So, we didn't like the Rock Reel and Gun Club, but we had no other choice. Until one day, Gina and I we lived in Lakewood, we were driving through the Lakewood Shopping Center, and we realized that the grocery store that had been Paul's meat market, we had shopped there, was empty. And we asked around, and yes, you know, there had been a fire there, and he had moved out, and it had been rebuilt, but there was no new tenant. And it was owned by Gene Muller. Perfect. A round building, you know, no windows, just parking lot, everything perfect. Because we didn't own it. We didn't have any money to rent it. We didn't have anything. So we went to Gene Muller and we said, look, why don't you loan it to us for a month? And I think he was so surprised at our audacity that he said yes. No, I think he was in sympathy with our motives. So we did that. We acquired the keys. We've been rehearsing elsewhere. We moved in there. We moved the shelves to one side. We put on our first show. We had no seats. We had to borrow seats from the Rock Reel and Gun Club and from All Saints. We had to borrow them on separate nights because of other commitments. So we'd have to bring the seats in, do the show, take the seats out. We put up temporary lights. We had one variac that would operate all those lights. In looking over this first program of biography, I see for lights 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 people listed. And I wondered what all those 6 people did. There was only one variac with one hand. There they are. The show was, if we were to see it today, I wonder what we would think of it. We were delighted, and the audience were delighted. There were some problems. I was house manager one night, which is the person in charge of getting people in and keeping things moving. And in the middle of the show, the sheriff's deputy arrived. We weren't in the city then. We were part of the county, and this was his jurisdiction, and this was a closed meat market, and there were all these lights and all these cars parked there. What was going on, he said. And I said, we're doing a show. And he looked at me very suspiciously, and I said, come in and take a look. So he came in and he looked at me, and he looked. I guess he was satisfied there wasn't anything really illegal or immoral going on because he left. Well, from then on, we took off. And we had enough money that we could offer Mr. Muller a lease generous. And at the end of that first year, we made sufficient funds to consider purchasing the building, which we did at very favorable terms. But in all this time, we had the complete support of the community. Everyone helped us, everyone liked us, everyone participated. Now, over the years, we've gotten better, we do fantastic shows, we've had controversies, we've tried to appeal to the needs of the community. In the summers, we have youth programs for training purposes, but we're always open for new suggestions, and new involvements. And as Baytown has changed, I think we need to change too. I wonder just in what direction this will go. I think this is something we're wrestling with now. As far as I'm concerned, in thinking back over some of those great moments and all the many wonderful people that have come through, I think of HMS Pinafore. Audrey said that I sang something from that. Gilbert Sullivan has always been one of the passions of mine, and back in our second year, we were considering what to do, and we said, we ought to do a musical. Oh, no, you can't do a musical. We're too small. You know, we don't have enough, we don't have all that stage and everything. We just can't do it. Well, let's try it anyway. So we decided we would do something, and we chose Pinafore because there's no royalty. Gilbert Sullivan was long gone. And we chose me to direct it because nobody else would. Now, I didn't know anything about music. I never directed a play, but I figured I could wing it and act like I had. Well, was I wrong? Because when we had the rehearsals, and we advertised this to all the community choirs, the church choirs, the school choirs, and we had the tryouts, rather, it was jammed full of singers and musicians, people that knew music. And they were wonderful. And we did a fabulous show. And many of those people stayed with us, not only as singers, but as actors. Jackie Hooker, who directed our last thing this weekend, our past president has been very active in the last 25 years. She showed up for the first time that day. And that's what we like. We like this new people coming in all the time. New emphasis. I think the other thing I remember about how things are changing is that we have never canceled a show. We have never canceled a performance. We always lighted up the theater and done something. We did cancel one show, though, after it was announced and cast, and that was a play called Lysistrata, which is a Greek comedy written 3,000 years ago or so, about wars going on in these city-states, and the ladies of these two opposing cities are rather tired of their men being off fighting these battles, so they decide that they're going on strike, and they're going to withhold their intimate favors until the men come to their senses. Well, this works fine until there's one young lady who can't hold it out, and there are complications and things. Well, you know, been around for 3,000 years. For some reason, the community wasn't ready for it. This was in the late 1960s or something. And we had so much opposition that we had to cancel the show. 15 years later, things had changed. And we did a play called Boys in the Band, which was also controversial. It's almost X-rated because it's very explicit. It deals with homosexuality. But the community was ready for it. And the Baytown Sun said that we were to be commended for the courage that we displayed in doing plays like this. It's not that we're trying to shock, but we're trying to be in the mainstream of modern theater. I'm sure there's much more I can say, but I won't.
Thank you very much. I was really excited when I heard that we had, a long time really fascinated with all the people who I know who have lived in Baytown for a long time and who were very active with it. And I was so pleased when Mrs. Puderbaugh said that she would come and tell us about it.
Over the past few months, I've observed that the panelists on these Tuesday night programs have had a project that was born in the early days of Baytown, flourished all these years, and is the project of today. So when I was contacted to do the Civic music program, I had a very negative attitude. I said, no way, when I talk about something that died so many years ago. But when she told me that I only had 10 minutes, I thought, well, if I couldn't get any information, I could talk off the top of my head about Duplicate Bridge. I did have some information about that. But certainly Civic music is not a project of today. Civic Music Association is a national organization with headquarters in New York City. It has a twofold purpose. One is to bring musical programs to small cities and large towns, people who would not ordinarily have the opportunity of having this type of program. Secondly, they allowed their up-and-coming young artists to have a place before a live audience to practice for their trip to Carnegie Hall, which is the aim, goal of every one of them. Civic music came to the Tri-Cities in 1945. An agent came from New York. In just a few days, he organized an executive board with Henry Schutze as the president, and then organized a banquet and had 125 volunteers to sell subscriptions to Civic music. There were no individual tickets sold, only the one subscription for the entire season. The selling was not easy because we couldn't tell them what the programs would be. And I remember one time he told us, tell them it's like a magazine. When you buy a subscription to a magazine, you don't know what it's going to contain, but you buy it anyway. And this same way with this. Because our programs depended on the number of subscriptions we sold, the quality of the programs went up with the number of tickets that we sold. We tried to sell 700 adult tickets and 200 student tickets, and it wasn't easy because they wanted to know what they would see. All we could promise was at least 4 programs and maybe a 5th one. And once or twice we did have a 5th program. We did sell our 700 adult tickets and our 200 students. We did have some very famous people. Every time I see the name of Ferranti and Teicher on the New York pages, I am so pleased that I was able to see them twice. They came 2 years and came at a price that we could afford to pay them, which you could not touch now at all. Do you remember Blanche Seabaum? She came to us in the early days. Jerome Hines, another famous name. Mimi Benzel came twice. I'm very happy that I got to see her. And someone reminded me that James Dick came. I do not remember him, but now he is in charge of the festival in Round Top. And I know several of you do go to Round Top for those musicals. And Beverly Sills. Well, do you remember her? And did you see her the last Sunday in July on 60 Minutes? She was wonderful, and she is very happy and very pleased with her career, and she has gone where she thought she wanted to be. Okay, now they weren't all good, and one really bombed. I want to tell you about just the one. It was a string quartet, string ensemble. The programs came to us from New York, and when our musical program people saw the programs, they just almost passed out, said they'll never go over in Baytown. One of the executive board members met them at the airport and talked all the way back to Baytown about lightening it just a little bit. After intermission, put in a few notes somebody's heard before. But no, they were practicing for Carnegie Hall 2 weeks hence. They would not change one note. They were practicing. Well, a great many of our patrons did not come at all, and many left at intermission, and it really bombed. And do you know when we went out to sell subscriptions that year, do you know what program people remembered? You're right, the string quartet. We had fun, and I'll tell you one fun thing. One time when Civic Music was coming to our town, one of the executive board members invited all the executive board and our husbands and wives or dates and the program people to come to her bayshore home for a late supper and 2 hours of chit-chat. And she left early, picked up her husband and the food and all these things, took them out there, and waited us. As soon as the program was over, we went out there, we had a delicious supper, and then 2 hours of fun. Some sang, some danced, some told tall stories, some just talked, and then the party was over. We offered to help her clean up the kitchen and whatever. She said no, and she shooed us on out. And when she got the trash ready and her things ready, she awakened her husband. She thought he was asleep in the back bedroom all this time. But anyway, he got up, picked up the trash bag, took it out, started the car, and when she got to the door, all she saw was these lights going toward Baytown. He had gone off and left her. Well, she just sat down and waited because she knew he'd be back in a few minutes to pick her up. But an hour passed and he hadn't come back, so she knew then that he was not going to come back and pick her up. Then she became very frightened. Here she was out here on Trinity Bay, probably the only person out there. She hoped she was the only person out there, but she locked doors and pulled down shades and became very, very frightened. And you know all the things that you hear that go bang in the night? They did all that. She planned all sorts of ways to kill him, and she didn't go to bed. Morning came finally. Morning also came in Baytown, and he realized what he had done. So he had to get in the car and go back out. But after daylight came, her sense of humor came back, and she could see how funny this was, what a funny occasion it was. So by the time he got out there to pick her up, she didn't kill him like she had planned to at all. But that was one of the funny things. Civic music was a learning time. I'm glad I was a part of it. I'm sorry it isn't today. Now, just because Baytown doesn't have civic music doesn't mean that civic music stopped existing. It's very much in force now. When I was in Marshalltown, Iowa, last September, they were getting ready for their first program. And so it is an ongoing organization. And I'm sorry we don't have it. I think it'd be good for Baytown to have it now. I know it's good for them to have it then. But that's about all I know about Susie. You want to hear anything about bridge?
I was really pleased to hear, too, that we used to have an organization called the Topeka Women's Orchestra. And Elvira Martinez used to live in Baytown and used to be a member, and she came from Houston to tell us about it.
The Topeka Orchestra is really a monument to the Goose Creek Independent School District and to the musical talents and expertise of Dr. Antonio Banuelos, who came to Baytown in the year 1936. Educated in the finest of music conservatories and qualified to teach every imaginable instrument, Dr. Banuelos was nonetheless content to settle in Baytown, where he established his music studio. He became affiliated with the Houston Symphony Orchestra. He formed a youth orchestra, And if all of this weren't enough, he contacted the Hispanic community in view of instructing their children in the field of music. Well, the ravages of the Great Depression, combined with the racial restrictions which were then imposed upon Hispanics, had kept the community at a poverty level. This meant that there was no money for music lessons. This did not faze Dr. Banuelos. Music instruction was begun in the old community hall. Every child was expected to learn the basics of music, and this included solfeo, which is the singing of the scales in pitch without the benefit of an instrument while marking time, much as a choir or band director will do. Mastery of 2 methods was required before he allowed you to touch an instrument. The parents began a serious effort to save enough money to purchase instruments so that their children could participate in the program. After much hard sacrifice, they were finally able to achieve this. El profesor, the professor, as we call him, then proceeded to order the instruments. Arrival of these instruments caused the boys' band and the all-girls orchestra to be formed. The all-girls orchestra was soon ready to play and began performing. It was at this time that Dr. Banuelos contacted the school board. He contacted them in view of securing their sponsorship of a music program which would be carried out at the facilities of the De Zavala Elementary School. By the year 1938, the school board had approved the music program. Uniforms were designed, agreed upon, and ordered. Additional instruments were purchased. The boys' band rivaled the best of bands, playing the finest of music and playing it well. They were very, very successful until they finally fell victim to World War II, as one by one the boys formed a part of the military forces. The all-girls orchestra, however, continued to flourish, and the city really took us to heart as we began playing for school, civic, and social functions. The service organizations were some of our most ardent fans. They always invited us to play for their meetings, and we always looked forward to the next time when we would hear the roar of the lions ooh-ah as they responded to roll call. World War II brought military bases. We made many appearances at the military bases. We performed at the Todd Shipyard, and we played at McCloskey Veterans Hospital in Temple. Word of this unique group had spread in the meantime, and it was not unusual for us to play in cities such as Port Arthur, Beaumont, Freeport, Corpus, Galveston, and Houston, to name a few. The city of Laredo always invited us to participate in their Noche Mexicana festivities, which they held on an annual basis in February in observance of George Washington's birthday. Everybody fell in love with the group, and if you played an instrument that particularly appealed to people, they would often approach you at the end of the performance to compliment you and slip $1 or $2 in your hand. My sister and I often came home with as much as $10, which was a lot of money at that time, and it helped to defray our family's expenses. Performances in Houston were many, and in Houston and in Laredo, as well as later during an out-of-state trip which we took, we became accustomed to the fact that top performers on the Mexican stage and screen would appear on the program with us. It got to the point where these people expected us to be on the program and indeed looked as though they were looking forward to seeing us every time that they came. We also learned to take in stride the fact that whenever noted Mexican composers were in the area, they would find out about our group. They would ask for a special performance, which we gladly obliged. They were always very complimentary and never ceased to just speak about our performances in glowing terms. However, highlight of our group was this one trip that we took to New Mexico, Arizona, and California. We performed at theaters in the major cities in these states, as well as in many of the small cities. This was truly a beautiful experience to us, and it also afforded us our first opportunity to travel out of state. The tour was very successful, and there were some very serious offers by very good agents, which called for our remaining on the West Coast in view of our furthering our career. There were also many offers for us to continue the tour, have an expanded tour to all the different parts of the country. Well, this called for a vote on the part of the girls. The vote which we took dictated that we would come home. All the girls were homesick, but it was really never established whom we were missing the most, whether our parents or our boyfriends. But come home we did. Well, playing around the state, out of state, and locally was really a lot of fun. We really enjoyed it. It never occurred to us to have stage fright, for we had been taught very well. But I must truthfully say that we just especially delighted in performing within our own Hispanic community, for we were truly the bright spot in their existence. One of the orchestra's families had a big truck. On Mother's Day, we would meet at the school at 3 o'clock in the morning. We would place chairs on the bed of the truck. We would tune our instruments and begin a round of serenading. Each one of the orchestra's mothers could count on our driving up to the front of her house very, very quietly and begin playing Las Mañanitas, which is a traditional Mexican serenade song. We would then sing a stanza for them. The daughter of the mother being serenaded would then select one song, which we would then play for that mother before we proceeded to the next girl's home. While the mothers always knew that we were coming, it never yet ceased to be a very, very emotional time for them, and I may say for us as well. But if the mothers could count on our coming, we in turn knew that we could depend on being invited into the homes of at least